9.1 Animal Matters 1. Animals, birds and insects. Young ones. 1,
Dog. Puppy.
2,
Goat. Kid.
3,
Horse. Foal.
4,
Cow. Calf.
5,
Hen. Chick.
6,
Lion. Cub.
9.2 Where they live. 1,
A hive. Bee.
2,
A stable. Horse.
3,
A cage. Canary.
4,
A kennel. Dog.
5,
A tank. Goldfish.
6,
A nest. Blackbird.
9.3 The noises they make. 1,
Squeak. Mouse.
2,
Bark. Dog.
3,
Neigh. Horse.
4,
Meow. Cat.
5,
Roar. Lion.
6,
Grunt. Pig.
7,
Twitter. Bird.
9.4 Animal parts. 5,
A beak.
1,
Claws.
2,
A fin.
7,
Fur.
8,
Hooves.
6,
Horns.
10,
Paws.
9,
A shell.
4,
A tail.
3,
Wings.
9.5
Have you ever had a pet?
Sadly not. I've always wanted to, but I've never been able to because I'm allergic to cats and dogs.
Are you? I'm not, but my sister is, which is why we never had them either. But my kids really want a puppy, and so does my husband.
I think you probably should then. What's stopping you? You ought to go to a rescue centre for abandoned dogs.
I already have.
So you really are going to get one then?
I suppose so. I'm not 100% convinced, but the children are.
9.6 1,
Do you like dogs?
No, I don't, but my husband does.
So does mine. We have 3 Alsatians.
2,
I went to Kenya last summer.
Lucky you. I'd love to go there. Did you go on safari?
No, I wanted to, but it was a business trip and I didn't have time.
3,
Ali doesn't eat meat or fish, does she?
She does eat fish sometimes. She loves shellfish.
Ugh, I don't like shellfish.
Neither do I. It's so difficult to eat.
9.7
Good afternoon and welcome to A Question of Food, where each week we look at a different aspect of food and the food industry. This week we're talking about veganism. Well over 500,000 people in the UK now describe themselves as vegan, an increase of over 500% in 10 years, and 20% of people under the age of 35 have tried a vegan diet.
9.8.
Good afternoon and welcome to A Question of Food, where each week we look at a different aspect of food and the food industry. This week we're talking about veganism. Well over 500,000 people in the UK now describe themselves as vegan, an increase of over 500% in 10 years, and 20% of people under the age of 35 have tried a vegan diet. So, what are the arguments for and against veganism, and is it here to stay? We have two experts here to explore the arguments. Jimmy, a vegan activist who also runs a vegan restaurant in East London. Hello, Jimmy.
Hello.
And Simone, a dietitian and omnivore.
Hello.
Jimmy, let me start with you. What, in your view, are the main reasons for the explosion of interest in veganism?
For me, there are two main reasons. The most obvious reason for veganism is to do with animal rights, and this argument has been around for a long time. In fact, writer Leo Tolstoy had this to say in 1886, and it sums up my feelings very well. A man can live and be healthy without killing animals for food. Therefore, if he eats meat, he participates in taking animal life merely for the sake of his appetite. And to act so is immoral. I think this is at the heart of why so many people are now becoming vegans. The idea that killing and eating animals and modern farming practices are simply immoral. And the second big reason is that being a vegan helps the environment. It reduces your carbon footprint. There was a recent study at Oxford University which concluded that adopting a vegan diet can reduce your carbon footprint by 73%, which is far more significant than cutting down on flights or buying an electric car.
Simone, can I bring you in here? These both seem pretty strong arguments. What do you think of those 2 points?
Well, the first point, the point about your moral position, I do think that's a very personal decision, whether to eat meat or not. And I personally, I don't think it's immoral. But I think everybody needs to decide for themselves. An unfortunate aspect of veganism is that it's easy for vegans to believe that their position is morally superior, and so they make meat eaters feel morally inferior, which of course meat eaters resent. So immediately you have this conflict, which I really think is unfortunate.
Jimmy, can I ask you, do you feel morally superior to Simone?
Yes. Yes, I do feel superior. I do think that veganism is a morally strong position, but it's not about being better than other people. It's just about doing what's right.
And Simone, what about Jimmy's second point, about the environment?
Well, broadly speaking, Jimmy is right. Being a vegan can reduce your carbon footprint. But it isn't quite as simple as that. Some foods that are a real favourite with vegans, like avocados and quinoa and soya beans, are grown a long way from the UK. I mean, the biggest producers of quinoa are Peru and Bolivia, and avocados come to the UK from Mexico, the Caribbean, Africa, and soya beans from Brazil. And there's a significant environmental impact associated with bringing those foods to Britain, and they are often not grown in a sustainable way. Growing food crops can be just as damaging to the environment as farming animals. And there's also the problem that demand for those foods is now so high in, for example, Britain and the States, that there isn't enough left for the country that actually grows the food. So, for example, Kenya has recently banned the export of avocados because they were all going abroad, with none left for the Kenyans.
OK, Simone, that's a valid point. As a dietitian, what do you think are the health implications of being vegan? We hear a lot about vitamin deficiency and so on. Is that something we should be concerned about?
Yes, it is true that it's harder to maintain a balanced diet if you're vegan, and that may present a serious health risk, especially for children and teenagers, who I absolutely believe should not be vegan. Humans are designed to be omnivores, so obviously if you eat a bit of everything, like me, then you get plenty of vitamins and minerals and so on. But vegans have to really make sure that they get enough of these things. The classic example is vitamin B12. If you're vegan, you need to take B12 supplements or eat food fortified with B12. If you don't, you can become quite ill quite quickly.
Oh, of course you do need to take a bit of care, but that goes without saying. There's nothing wrong with taking vitamin supplements, and lots of people who aren't vegans do the same thing. But I think you're missing the important point, which is that overall, being vegan is hugely positive for your health. Less risk of heart disease, less risk of diabetes. And how many vegans do you know who are overweight?
That may be true to some extent, but fundamentally, I still don't see why anyone would choose to eat a diet that doesn't deliver the right nutritional balance for the human body.
One thing I want to ask you both about is what you could call the social side of being vegan. I mean, eating out. That can be very difficult.
Well, actually, I think that problem has disappeared now. Being vegan is becoming more and more mainstream, and most restaurants offer vegetarian and vegan options.
Well, one if you're lucky.
Yes, and that's only true in big cities and in certain countries. I mean, there are some countries where avoiding all animal-based food is more or less impossible.
And Jimmy, what about when you go round to somebody's house for dinner? Does that create problems?
Oh, not at all. Most of my friends are vegan anyway, and all my other friends are really getting into trying vegan recipes.
I'm afraid you'd have a problem if you came to my house. I think it's really inconsiderate to expect the host to cook something specially for you, or for everybody to have to eat the food that only you actually want. You'd expect me to cook something special for you, but would you be prepared to cook a steak for me?
I'm sorry, but I wouldn't.
So, can I ask you both just to round off? Is veganism the future?
Absolutely it is.
I think it'll always be an option, but it'll never be for everyone.
Nine point 9. 1.
The most obvious reason for veganism is to do with animal rights.
2.
And the second big reason is that it reduces your carbon footprint.
3.
The point about your moral position, I do think that's a very personal decision.
4.
And there's a significant environmental impact associated with bringing those foods to Britain.
5.
We hear a lot about vitamin deficiency and so on.
6.
It's harder to maintain a balanced diet if you're vegan.
7.
And that may present a serious health risk, especially for children and teenagers.
9.10. 2. Animal issues. 1.
In your country, are there any organisations that protect animals and their environment, or animal charities?
2.
Are there any animal rights activists who organise protests against the use of animals for entertainment, product testing, or medical research?
3.
Are there any local or regional festivals where animals are treated cruelly?
4.
Are there any national parks or conservation areas where animals live in the wild?
5.
Are there any endangered species?
6.
Are there any animals that are hunted for sport?
7.
Are there any zoos or centres where animals are being bred in captivity in order to reintroduce them into the wild.
8.
Are there any animals that are kept or transported in inhumane conditions? For example, veal calves.
9.11. Common adverb collocations. 1.
It's something I feel very strongly about.
2.
Well, I don't feel particularly strongly about it either way.
3.
I have to say I am completely against zoos nowadays.
4.
I don't entirely agree with you.
5.
Well, I'm absolutely convinced that the animal does not want to be there.
6.
I'm quite sure that kids could get the same amount of pleasure from seeing animals in the wild.
9.12. Preparing food. 1. How food is prepared. 18.
Baked figs.
7.
Barbecued pork ribs.
11.
Boiled rice.
1.
Chopped parsley.
2.
Deep-fried onion rings.
10.
Grated cheese.
9.
Grilled fillet of fish.
17.
Mashed potatoes.
8.
Melted chocolate.
4.
Minced beef.
16.
Peeled prawns.
3.
Poached egg.
6.
Roast lamb.
20.
Scrambled eggs.
5.
Sliced bread.
12.
Steamed mussels.
15.
Stewed plums.
19.
Stuffed chicken breast.
13.
A toasted sandwich.
14.
Whipped cream.
9.13. 2. Utensils. 5.
A baking tray.
10.
A chopping board.
1.
A calendar.
3.
A food processor.
2.
A frying pan.
11.
A bowl.
6.
A saucepan.
7.
Scales.
8.
A sieve.
4.
A spatula.
9.
A whisk.
9.14. 1.
Do you remember the name of that new Mexican restaurant?
2.
The table over there in the corner might be a bit more comfortable.
3.
I can't drink any alcohol because I've just taken some anti-allergy medicine.
4.
Are you going to have the steak again, or do you want to try something different?
5.
When you're baking a cake, it's really important to preheat the oven to the right temperature.
6.
If you don't know what courgette means, look it up in the dictionary.
7.
I always want to eat something sweet when I'm feeling miserable.
8.
If you have cooked and raw meat in your fridge, it's important to keep them separate.
9.
I love having Sunday lunch with all the family.
10.
It was a really expensive restaurant, but I thought the food was pretty ordinary.
9.15.
How to eat out. Tip 1. Always order the fish. Really good fresh fish is very hard to find, very hard to store and keep fresh. You've got to really cook it as soon as you buy it, or there's no point. It's often fiddly to prepare and very smelly to cook. It's what restaurants are for. It just amazes me that people will go into a restaurant and order the steak, a thing you can buy almost anywhere, keep for weeks, and cook however you like without doing anything to it, and it'll always basically be okay. Tip 2. Never eat the bread. An ex-girlfriend of mine eats nothing all day. She claims she doesn't get hungry. So, whenever we meet for dinner, she is utterly starving and gobbles up the entire bread basket and 3 pats of butter without pausing for breath. Then, halfway through her main course, she starts poking about and saying, "I don't know why they give you such large portions. I'll never eat all this." I just don't know why people eat the bread. You shouldn't be that hungry, ever. Bread is not a first course. It's a breakfast food, an accompaniment to certain terrines. But in an expensive place with a TV chef and a whole range of exciting things to chew on for the next couple of hours, why would anyone want to fill up with bread? I always tell them as soon as I arrive to bring no bread. But sometimes they do, and you must tell them to take it away. Tip 3. Have the vegetarian option, but not in a vegetarian restaurant. As a rule, the best vegetarian food is cooked by meat-eating chefs who know how to cook, rather than by bearded hippies. For this reason, if you want good vegetarian food, go to a normal, that is, omnivorous restaurant. There may not be much choice, but personally, I would much rather restaurants focused on doing 1 or 2 things brilliantly than offered a whole load of stuff that was just about okay. Tip 4. Never sit at a table outside. Why on earth would you want to eat outside? I suppose in a hot country where there's no air conditioning, it might be nice to sit outside in the shade overlooking the sea. But on a busy London street? Crazy. Go indoors. Also, in most restaurants, the outside tables are ruined by smokers. If you want to eat outside in London, take sandwiches and eat them in one of the wonderful parks. Tip 5. Insist on tap water. We have invested years and years and vast amounts of money into an ingenious system which cleans water and delivers it very cheaply to our homes and workplaces through a tap. And yet, last year, we bought 3 billion litres of bottled water. That's just free money for the restaurant. So don't order mineral water. Ask for a jug of tap. Tip 6. How to complain and get a result. Complain nicely, politely, apologetically, but firmly and at the very moment of disappointment. I'm awfully sorry to make a fuss, you might say, but this fish really isn't as fresh as I'd hoped. I really can't eat this. What else might I have as a replacement that can come quickly? There's simply no way you can lose with that. The end result is likely to be free main courses, a jolly time, and an amicable departure. Tip 7. Be nice to the staff. Just be nice to them, that's all. You should always be nice to everybody, obviously, but if you're not, make being nice to staff in restaurants your only exception. Don't flirt with them, and don't ask foreign staff where they're from. Just smile and say please and thank you, and look at them when you're ordering. And then shut up and eat.
9.16. 1.
It's often fiddly to prepare and very smelly to cook.
2.
So, whenever we meet for dinner, she is utterly starving and gobbles up the entire bread basket and 3 pats of butter without pausing for breath.
3.
I don't know why they give you such large portions.
4.
But in an expensive place with a TV chef and a whole range of exciting things to chew on for the next couple of hours.
5.
Personally, I would much rather restaurants focused on doing 1 or 2 things brilliantly than offered a whole load of stuff that was just about okay.
6.
So don't order mineral water. Ask for a jug of tap.
7.
I'm awfully sorry to make a fuss, you might say, but this fish really isn't as fresh as I'd hoped.